So the brand new Apple product has just dropped, the Apple Savings account. Now I think it comes with a stipulation that you have to have the Apple credit card in order to open the account. Could be completely wrong on that, but I think that's how it's going to work. And their savings account, it's not too bad. It's pretty competitive with other high yield accounts at a 4.15% interest rate. And it's a partnership with Goldman Sachs, which only makes sense because they are already partnered with them on their credit card. That's where the credit cards kind of come from, or the accounts and the bankings, everything's done with Goldman Sachs. And now they are doing a savings account. And I think the Apple savings account, the 4.15%, actually beats Goldman Sachs high yield savings account, which is kind of funny. But if you want to look at the Apple savings account, obviously grow your savings with Apple Card here. So I'm pretty sure everything I've read talks about Apple Card owners being able to do this. So that's why I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% sure you have to have the Apple Card to get the savings. But you can see here, your savings is now available. Choose to grow your daily cash over time at 4.15%. In a savings account, that's more than 10x the national average, which I guess is true, right? 10x the national average. Everyone talks about normal savings accounts with like 0.1% or something. So, in terms of high yield accounts, it's at least competitive there, right? It's still really good, even competing against the high yield accounts. But the thing that separates this Apple savings account from other regular savings accounts is this kind of small thing, but a decent thing to have. You can see you start growing your savings like has never been easier. Begin by choosing to automatically deposit your daily cash into the savings account so that every time you earn daily cash with the Apple Card, it can earn 4.15% APY, and that's more than 10x and everything. So that's the big feature kind of that's separating this kind of account, this kind of savings account from everything else. Instead of only being able to deposit money, you can combine it with the Apple Card, and every time you go out and buy something and you use the Apple Card, you get 2% or 1% if you use the card, 2% if you use Apple Pay, 3% if it's some sort of partnership they have or an Apple product. Then all of that cash, the cash back you get, is daily cash back, immediately goes into your savings account and immediately starts earning that APY. So that is a really good thing, right? That's something that you can have more of a compounding effect. Now, is it a way to get people to spend more money on the credit card? Maybe. And I also like looking at the kind of marketing here. Obviously, you see the savings and the card here. And, maybe looking way too into this, but if you have your savings account and credit card balance and you almost have as much money on your credit card as you do in your savings account, you might be doing something wrong. Don't spend that kind of money. But in this marketing, I mean, you can see it's kind of to appeal to everybody. So you don't put an insane number in the savings. You don't put 20 grand in savings. Maybe people look at it and say, oh, that's not for me. People can look at this, say, I could see my money doing that. And then obviously the credit card too, making it maybe carrying this balance here so they can get some interest off of that. Kind of seeing like, oh, put everything on the credit card, use it. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to see this, the marketing done. But all in all, for this kind of savings account and credit card combination things, I think it's pretty neat. I think it's a pretty good thing, and it's at least a competitive savings account. It's not just kind of thrown together and just barely better than average. It's actually pretty decent. And obviously, you have people comparing, the savings accounts. Wells Fargo's point one, Chase is terrible, Bank of America is terrible, Apple's amazing. Now this is probably the worst way to compare Apple to the rest of the banks, right? Because you're not comparing it to the high yield savings accounts. That's what you should be comparing this to, not to the normal bank savings accounts, even though I don't know why those accounts aren't competitive with high yield accounts, but whatever. If you want to actually compare Apple, their account, because it's a high yield account, compare it to other high yield ones. So Apple's 4.15. If you compare it to Ally's 3.75. So it actually beats Ally by a pretty decent amount. And you compare it to Wealthfront. Wealthfront actually beats Apple at 4.3% from Wealthfront, and Apple 4.15. So it's still competitive, and obviously you can compare it to a bunch of the other ones. Citizens actually beats Apple. This Affinity is close. Either way you look at it, there's some that are a little bit higher than Apple, some that are a little bit lower, but Apple's is competitive with everything, which I think is important for this launch here. If they launched it and it was 3% or 3.5%, I don't think it would really be a good product. So it's a good thing that at least they are competitive in this high yield space. And as for this kind of savings account and, the behind the scenes and fees and stuff, it's actually pretty good, pretty standard stuff, but nevertheless still a good thing. You can see the rates more than 10x. Yeah. No fees and no minimum deposits and no minimum balance is pretty big. And then obviously FDIC for the $250,000. It's FDIC insured because it's from Goldman, so I'm sure that's where all of the money's being stored at, like Goldman accounts and Goldman's and FDIC bank. So you're all good. And when you look at this, some people look at the yield of 4.15% and say, where is this rate coming from? And I mean, with other high yield accounts offering similar things, you can see it's probably coming from a combination of treasury yields, which are around there, from mortgages, which have gone up to like 6 or 7% right now, and the loans that the banks are making. And usually the high yield accounts are made by banks that are online banks, so they don't have the overhead cost of people running the bank's physical locations and stuff. So they can obviously afford to give more money from what they get from their yields to their savings accounts because they don't have as much overhead cost. As well as this yield, I mean, you can basically do whatever you want. If you're the bank, if you're Goldman, you're probably considered a systemic bank, right? So if Goldman was to collapse, it's already come out. Janet Yellen already came out and said any bank that is a systemic risk, we are going to bail out 100%. So if you're Goldman Sachs, why not take the risk? Get this high yield account, get more customers, bring them to you, offer them this insane yield. And if you have to take insane risks to get it, who cares? You're going to get bailed out if it all goes wrong and you lose everything. So if you're a systemic bank, if you're a big bank, you take whatever risk you want. Who cares? Do all of the risk, the riskiest stuff, get as much customers as you can. And then if it all goes wrong, you're going to get bailed out by the government and you are going to be good. And if it all goes right, then you're going to make a ton of money and have a ton of customers. So you literally can't lose, which is still a big problem. Like, I think that is absolutely dumb. If you're a bad bank and you do bad business, you should collapse. You shouldn't get a bailout. You shouldn't have taxpayers fund your bad decisions because everybody or these bankers and billionaires who are in the banks, if they fail, all cry that they need a bailout, when in reality, if you were a bad business and you go under, you should go under. You don't get to socialize losses and privatize gains. You either get to privatize it all or you don't exist anymore. So if you're not willing to take the risk, then get out of the game. But Apple's new product, I actually think it's pretty decent. I like the savings account. I like the combination with the Apple Card where you can actually use your daily cash, go immediately into your savings account and start earning there. It's just an interesting feature to have. And this all goes with the Apple ecosystem, right? Once Apple gets you in their ecosystem, it is extremely hard to leave. And if you have all of your Apple devices and your finances tied with Apple, you're basically a customer for life. Like you're not going anywhere. So that's what Apple's probably trying to do, go down this finance route and try and get people to get into their ecosystem. And once you're there and tie your money there, you're not leaving. Like you're not going anywhere. Let's be real. People aren't going to go through the hassle of getting everything out and changing everything. They're just going to stay where they are. That's probably Apple's long-term plan. But right now, I mean, they're pretty good products. But that's going to do it for this video. As always, do me to smash the like button and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in my next video.